make sure the state's aware of that as well.
Channel.
I oversee all the workplace specialist licenses. So anybody who does what I did, which is leave industry and come in and get a teaching license, I'm the one who helps get them through that process because it's unique in that way. And then I provide CT specific support to the district, and that can mean lots of different things, not just traditional professional development, but really wide range of things that you can CT, consider donations, partnerships with industry, and that sort of thing. Again, I'm out advocating with employers, community, making sure that people know who exists, and that you know, I like to say on my study, about what's happening in all four schools, and hopefully people know there are good things happening in the community, when they bring community, small community. I love defending these things and that rap about all four of those schools I mentioned are loaded with great kids doing these things. Yeah, this was no exception. There's over 27 programs at those four schools. The ones in red that are bold are the ones that KV offered. So it's really great selection. When I took this position a year and a half ago, I did it because I knew that all four schools and just offered it as a whole. We're doing great things for kids. So I wasn't getting bought into. And recognizing programs you've heard of, or some great programs that you've heard about, which is good. That's what we want. Quick rundown, not just of the programs, but now I've matched up the name of the teachers with those programs. There are 14 CTE teachers. There are some other staff members and other teachers who contribute. They may pick up a class or two. They may help with work-based learning. Maybe they're not on this list because of that, but there are other teachers who are we can almost call fringe CTE classes that are brought in to support as well. Questions about the programs I mentioned or the teachers? We'll struggle up. I had 6 slides with data. I've narrowed it down to 1. You're welcome. I do love data because it usually is, especially for our district, as it supports that what we're doing is on the right track. I put a box around 3 of what the state calls indicators for CTE. The 21, 14, and 35 represent the numbers from the 24-25 school year for what I call the CTE trifecta. That's credentials, dual credit, and work-based learning in order. But there's other things on that list too, talking about graduation rate, language arts, math, and science. You can see those in the middle, as well as post-program placement, meaning are our students leaving and going off and getting jobs or going to college or going to the military or just doing good in the world because of the training they receive while they're in their school. All this stuff is measured a lot of times behind the scenes, so teachers and students don't really have to worry about it too much, but it's stuff that backs up that, hey, the money we're getting from the state to support these programs is turning out good results. And then non-traditional. That number says 29. This is out of the 54 CT districts where we rank in that category. Non-traditional would be boys in nursing, girls in welding, that sort of thing. Not every program has a non-traditional gender, but many of them do, and they can track that. We're encouraged to make sure that we are opening up our programs to all students. I like to use the example of when a girl sits down next to a guidance counselor and says, I think I want to take welding. She doesn't say, oh, no, honey, you should take nursing, right? Or vice versa. A guy goes, no, I think I want to be a nurse. I think I can make a difference in the healthcare industry. Oh, how about you go swing a hammer in construction? No, we got to be guiding these kids towards saying you've got a passion for it. This is the place to discover it. So they do track those things. The most important thing is of the 54 districts in the state, you take all of those indicators, you add them all up, and you do some crazy math. The state does it for us, and they tell us that we're the #1 district in the state. So of the 54 CT districts, we're talking South Bend, talking all the Indianapolis schools, all of them across the state. When you take a look at the measurements of program quality, district quality, we're the #1 district in the state. So KV plays a major role in that as well, which is something to be proud of. And I can't take credit for that. I mean, I'll take a little bit. We should all take a little credit, right? But I look back on the last 6 years, we've always been in the top 10. In the last 3 years, we've been in the top 5. So, you know, consistently great and doing great things for kids. Real quick overview of the grant. A lot of people recognize the CTE grant. As a district, we get about $184,000 to spend on CTE programming across the 4 schools, 4 corporations that make up the co-op. Put the formula for how they come up with that, but basically I'm the administrator of a $184,000 grant, and I write that grant, then we're awarded that grant, and then we divide that up. This year, I divided it up like this: personnel. One of the things the teachers told me through surveys, as well as just talking with them, they wanted a lot more professional development. They wanted to be given time to train on CTE specific things. No offense to the traditionally trained teachers in the corporation, but sometimes CTE teachers, they didn't go to school to be a teacher. They want to learn some specific things as it relates to transitioning from industry to education and those sort of things. So we've set some additional money aside to help support that for teachers. Travel, again, going to conferences, those sort of things for teachers, or workshops, professional organizations. The big thing is the materials, $133,000 towards materials. I put equipment as zero because equipment from the state standpoint is anything over $10,000. We can spend money on that. Right now, we don't have anything identified as greater than that. Again, doesn't mean we can't spend it. I divide the equipment and materials up to each of the schools based on some percentages. Bottom line is KV right now has about $24,000 they can spend on materials, equipment. You hear materials and you think sort of like consumables. That term actually could mean it could be a $9,000 major piece of equipment. I think the term materials is a little misleading. It's not just like paper, paper and pencils, right? And we're talking about big equipment just under $10,000. So I show you this so you see every year roughly $20 to $30,000 that I work with the administration to make sure we're fulfilling the needs of our programs. What we don't want is students being in a classroom that's not prepared to prepare them for the future. And so we've got some funds available to do that. And we talk short term, we also talk long term. We say maybe not this year, but let's look 2 years down the road when we need to replace that piece of equipment. And it's a little bit higher cost. We don't eat up all of our budget, so how can we plan ahead? And Mr. Myers, as well as the other principals I work with, plan ahead on that. Questions about the budget, those sort of things. I'm going to be a little high level. I want to make sure I'm transparent, but also not going to bore you with some of the stuff we deal with. But a major part of our budget is materials, making sure kids have things they need in their programs. But there's other funds available, like I said, for professional development. That sort of thing. Cover real quick what makes CTE unique. It is my whole world. All 5 of my kids have been in some sort of CTE program, and my wife is also a CTE teacher. So it is like my whole world. I want to make sure you guys all understand why it's important from an education standpoint. We're all familiar with the Department of Education. They oversee all of the education, K through 12 in the state of Indiana, with the exception of career and tech ed. They play a role in that, but I actually report to and get the actual CTE from a state standpoint is overseen by the Commission for Higher Education. A little bit of a surprise to some people. Obviously, I work with the IDOE, but all my stuff comes from the CHE. Huge across the board, not just in Indiana, not just obviously in the cooperative, but coast to coast across the country. We're trying to train students for high wage, high skill, and in-demand careers. All 3 of those things are equally as important. We make sure students can support themselves, make sure they have good skills that sets them apart from maybe their colleagues or those other folks applying for that job. I want to make sure we're preparing them for in-demand careers. Right, when we train them to fix wagon wheels, and it's not really the direction of the transportation industry at this point. Well, maybe, I don't know. Jasper County, maybe. Born and raised in Detroit, so I've got just a little bit of a motor vehicle. That was back in the day. Workplace specialist license, I already hinted at it. That's what allows folks to leave industry and come into education. They don't have to go back to school. They don't have to do what's called transition to teaching, spend thousands of dollars. They basically say, we as a school corporation can say, this person's an expert in their field. We trust them. We will guide them towards being an excellent teacher. And then they say, okay, well, they got to do a couple of things first. And then we work them through that process. It's a tremendous thing, unique to some states, and Indiana's leading the way in regards to that workplace specialist license. So I already mentioned supported by the federal and state grant funds. And then also there's additional funding that gets to each school corporation. It's a per credit amount, goes back to the state. Big support from industry and community partners. You don't see that need in an algebra class or an English class, but I really think our classes in CTE can thrive when they've got partnerships with local business community members. I think that's so true that last week I had 2 sessions working with the teachers from all 4 schools, had good attendance from KV teachers. And we talked about building advisory committees, so getting folks on board to sit in and actually learn about the class and how can they help. And that's how we secure donations. That's how we update curriculum. That's how, really the community knows what we're doing is good. And, more recently, CT has a huge impact on the new Indiana diploma seals, certifications, dual credit, work-based learning, all play a role in the new diploma requirements as far as the seals go as well. So this is generally how the CT is unique. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about how that is impacted with KV. There are 14 instructors. There are, as of the 25-26 school year, there were about 80% of the students at the high school, grades 9 through 12, were in at least one CT class at some level, which, this isn't a thing that is offered to some kids. This isn't the old vocational word we don't say anymore. This is plays a major role in almost any student. And that was that year. That doesn't mean that throughout those 4 years, the other 20% will eventually take it. That just means that year, right? So plays a huge role. I'd like to say, maybe Mr. Merritt, you'll agree, every student will take at least one CT class before they leave. I mean, it's just that important. Every fall we report the enrollment numbers to the state. That's data that's given to me, and I report it through a state database. It's called 30A funding. KV received $739,000 in funding. That's a different amount for every course. There's different funding levels. I can get into all the funding amounts at some point if you really want to. But that money's what came back to the school, based on enrollment numbers. And I love bragging about the CTE trifecta there. The certifications, dual credits, work-based learning, 178 industry certifications were passed. I didn't say 178 students passed the certification, because what's great about that number is some students are stacking those certifications. So in that 178, there may be some students who have received multiple. And by the way, these are KV numbers specifically. I broke those out. So this is not for the whole cooperative. This is just a KV isolate. Over 3,200 dual credits were earned. Predominantly at Ivy Tech. Are we with Vincennes and Vincennes and Ivy Tech? And that is only CTE credits. That does not include any dual credits from academic courses. I don't have those numbers included in this. And then work-based learning hours, over 15,000 work-based learning hours among all the students at KV last year. Thoughts or questions on these in this slide? These thumbs up, right? This is good for you.
Yeah.
Kids doing good things. Quick spreadsheet or a quick table of the certifications. I was bragging on those certifications. What was that number? I said 178 passed. You see things like American Welding Society or AWS Welder, Inventor, AutoCAD, Revit, Autodesk, all of those from our engineering and architecture programs. As a personal trainer, we had 100% pass rate, 4 for 4 on that one. Emergency telecommunicator certification. The EMT went 6 for 6 on that one as well. Incredibly difficult to pass. It's incredibly difficult to get students to qualify to take it, let alone pass. So that's a huge thing. We're a terrific program here at KV for that one. There's some construction, NCCER is construction. OSHA and paraprofessional. Oh, I skipped over one of my favorites, which is CNA, which is 14 for 14 last year as well. Cranking out some awesome CNAs year after year, really, at KV. OSHA 10 is great. We had a 97% pass rate. That's what's considered foundational. It's nice to have, but not required. It doesn't contribute to graduation requirements, but it's a really nice thing for students to have when they apply for jobs. Paraprofessional. You'll notice COV, credential of value. Long story short, that means it doesn't count towards graduation requirements. Paraprofessional should. I advocated with some other directors of the state to get that switch from foundational to high level, important certification. This year, 26-27, it'll be considered a grad pathway certification. Just terrific. So that's 100% pass rate for that as well. We should be growing our own KV as well as other schools. Should be having students do cadet teaching and work-based learning as teachers. And saying, KV just posted now hiring paraprofessionals on their Facebook page. And my first thought was, hey, we had 7 students last year get that certification. All right, hello, circling back, right? Now we're going to pay them. Yeah, sorry, I always think that we plug these into jobs, right? That helps our other numbers, right? In post-program placement. One big circle in life. Thoughts or questions about this? We are always looking to add certifications. Every program should have a work-based learning certification or dual credit or some combination of those two. So, and then I'm going to jump in real quick. Some new things we're adding. Dr. Caleb added the Technical Honor Society, National Technical Honor Society, this past school year. And I believe that's something you're already aware of because it's something that got board approved. But that's something that he actually just talked this afternoon, hoping to grow that and start featuring those students who aren't just excelling academically, but they're excelling technically as well. And because I had a lot of words up here and I want to make sure you saw some pictures, I thought I'd throw up the Mr. Caleb's or Dr. Caleb's engineering classroom, the welding lab. These are all things I'm hoping you've seen. There's an ambulance, which is just recently donated to our EMT program. It's right now in our construction trades class. There's our nursing lab, EMT, and exercise science. And one of my professional goals, and I hope it's yours as well, is to see students in action. I showed you some pictures of students, but it's way more fun to see this equipment and these labs being used with students in their place, because that's when you can really see that this stuff's making a difference for these kids, young adults, really. I tried to be quick. I could go on forever. Because I really do love what I do. I love the people I do it with. I love working with Brian and all the teachers at KV. So I'll take any questions if you have any. Otherwise, just everyone here, hopefully knows how to get a hold of me. And I'm always wanting to sit down and chat, see if you with me.
With the Perkins money that we get each year, and obviously I'm assuming there's different answer to this for every year, but what are some of the major things that are consistently getting bought for KV through that Perkins money?
We purchased some software.
Okay.
So the business department uses a program that's like a simulation software. So they can plug numbers in and they can simulate what it's like to operate a business in a kind of a virtual world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the kind of more not big ticket items, but one of the things that every year I know is going to be coming because the team's not happy with that software program. And I guess I list that out because it's the type of thing that maybe could be an expense of the district, but we take on that as
right.
well. And a little disclaimer about Perkins. We can't use those funds for things that the district would use for a non-CTE program. That would be considered supplanting. So you can't buy textbooks for English, but say, oh, we're going to use Perkins, so we don't have to, right? So if it's something that's universal across the board for the district, we can't do it. But if it's something specific to career and tech ed, a program need, then we can. We purchased some mannequins, some welding equipment was a big purchase a couple of years ago. Actually, there was a secondary grant called a reserve grant, and we spent.
We bought engines for Garrett Bitterling's small engine repair. We've done that before.
For Zach class?
Yep. We've done both Jen, Bristol, and Jeff Molinar have software programs for tracking like skill, like especially Jen's for skills. And so South Lake Co-op has purchased that planner from them.
Yeah. So it's not like the most impressive purchase, but it helps her keep track for students' clinical hours for their EMT program and take practice tests throughout that. Actually, one of the things Ryan and I have talked about is just putting our heads together and come up with more needs, because sometimes it's a blessing and a curse. You've got resourceful, hardworking, dedicated teachers who don't ask for much because they'll make do with what they have.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to kind of say, hey, no, really, we have some money to spend. Stop saying you don't need anything, because I'm sure there is stuff out there. And so we're going to work with the teachers and say, we know we've got stuff that we could be adding to your programs. That goes back to the advisory committees. When you have a group of people in the room with you from the industry that you're teaching students to prepare them for, they're going to be able to give advice and say, this is the latest and greatest thing. What we don't want is 10-year-old technology.
Right.
And so they can give advice and say, this is something your students.
Because when you have that workplace specialist that was industry and then came to a school, they stopped their keeping up with industry to some extent.
Hopefully not, but sometimes they do.
On a daily basis.
Realistically, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, so we're we've got lots of ideas.
We would say needs, our teachers really in CTE don't have needs that they're not getting. I mean, anything they really need, they're getting, and it's trying to fill the ones. And last spring we were trying to squeeze it out of them to get something out of them, and everybody's like, no, I've got everything I need, so I don't really have any. We were trying to spend money, we couldn't spend enough money, so.
Yeah, we did have, well, we had some anatomy physiology stuff that were back ordered. Maybe we shouldn't, I shouldn't say all those. Animals in bags that we couldn't quite get delivered in time, but.
Yeah.
Kids are learning on very cool stuff. That's, anyway, any other questions?
Bob, thank you for presenting
Yeah,
and letting
thank
us, let our board know more about the CTE programs.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Good to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your birthday. Thank
Yeah,
you.
happy birthday.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Nice to meet everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Awesome, thanks.
That's very
Hope you
informative.
still feel better.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome, thanks. I want the cookie sheet. I'm not sure where dinner.
The second on our agenda is Brock from Baker Tilly, dealing with our financial forecast.
Good evening.
Hi.
We pass it down. So we can pull them out.
I'm gonna put this on your chair.
Accurate now. Thank you, sir. I'm pretty heavy. I can-
That's all right. I just wanted to make sure I knew. Okay, you got that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good evening, President Elkins, or Coach Elkins officially tonight. Good to see everyone again. I'm Brock Bausch from Baker Tilly. For those of you who remember me, typically here talking about debt and debt planning. So we're going to change that up a little bit this evening, and talk a little bit more about the education and operations fund going forward, what it looks like. So for me, you want to look at mainly three things. Do some quick education about Senate Bill Act 1, everybody's favorite topic, it seems like right now. A lot of information in the news as well. We're going to look at the projections for KV as it looks like today, knowing that that changes daily. Every time you have a transaction, that forecast changes. Then we'll wrap it up and look at things to be monitoring going forward. So I'm gonna welcome Mr. Street and Mr. Ritchie, who I've been working with on this presentation, for them to jump in as well if they want to add any additional commentary. It is not uncommon as we go through Senate Bill Act 1 to feel a little bit depressed about the nature of what's coming. So don't feel like you're out of sorts if it feels a little bit daunting at times, but welcome your questions as we go along. So first, going to get into some quick reminders just on how schools are funded in the state of Indiana. Really unique industries, you all know. So we think about first bucket, think about state funding, education. So everything that tracks for academic programs and services is funded through a state funding formula that's created every 2 years by the Indiana General Assembly. You have no direct control over the funding. You can provide input, but you don't have direct control over it. So if you think of academic program, education fund, think of state funding. The other funds that you manage, and Mr. Ritchie will talk about from the 2027 budget perspective, all locally funded. So property taxes, license tax, commercial vehicle excise tax, all locally funded. So your operations fund. So the operations to run the school corporation. So custodial staff, maintenance staff, your transportation staff, superintendent, CFO, everything non-academic to run the district is maintained and paid for from the operations. Debt service and referendum debt service, of course, anything that has a repayment of more than 1 year is tracked, and property taxes in the debt service funds. How schools are funded, and it's essentially been this way since 1973. So our current system is over 50 years old. So a lot of the items and years on our current system, but as schools in the state of Indiana primarily funded at the local level with property taxes. So the state of Indiana is based upon a tax rate. So what that math looks like is you take your tax levy, divide it by your net assessed value, and times by 100. So why 100? Because it's per $100 of assessed value. So it's essentially, when you think of a tax rate, it's a percentage in the state of Indiana. So the tax rate for 2026 for KV is almost 79 cents. So 79 cents per $100 of assessed value, which is much lower than the state average of about $1.02. Much lower than state average. 0.79 per $100 of assessed value. State average is $1.02. But if you lined up all 292 school corporations in the state of Indiana, pull that middle one, it's about $1.05. So again, well below the average. How property tax correlations work in the state of Indiana. As this team knows, the higher your net assessed value, lower your tax rate. So as the net assessed value goes up, it will help push down your tax rate. And we've seen some really strong growth. We'll look at where your growth has been the past few years in net assessed value. So as that, it's helped push down your tax rate. But as we see in 2027 and beyond, there's some forces from SCA 1 that are pushing down your net assessed value, which could push up your tax rate. So there's correlations there. As AV goes up, tax rate goes down. Flip it, as net AV goes down, tax rate goes up. So what that looks like for your operations fund, you may have heard Mr. Ritchie talk about your max levy growth quotient. So the max levy growth quotient is the maximum amount you can increase your operations fund levy every year. So essentially, it's an inflationary measure created by the state of Indiana. And what that has been from 2023 to 2026, somewhere between 4 and 5% going back to 2023. So pretty close to what inflation has been during that time period, right? So pretty somewhere in the ballpark. So projecting ahead from 2027 through 2031, we're looking at a 6% growth statewide in 2027 because it wasn't capped. Then looking further ahead, somewhere between 3.9 and 5% is what our team is projecting for the max levy growth. However, because KB has had such strong growth in net assessed value, you actually have, you're one of the 92 districts, I think it is, that because of your strong net ED growth, you can increase it more than that 6% amount. So you actually increase your operations fund levy in 2027 by 7.6%. So it's a little bit more than what some other schools and municipalities can in the state of Indiana, just because you've had that really strong 3-year net assessed value growth. That's why you may see an increase more on the levy compared to what the state established amount of 6% is. That's a great thing. So more reminders, more education. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I think you all know this pretty well. State of Indiana, we're a tax cap state. So since 2008, when they were voted in, we have a 1% cap on residential property. So if you have $100,000 gross assessed home, paying no more than $1,000. Ag land, rental property for long-term care is a 2% cap. $100,000 rental home is paying no more than $2,000. 3% business cap, business personal property, $100,000 of assessed value, paying no more than $3,000. However, KV is one of the districts in the state of Indiana with the referendum. So anytime there is a voter approved referendum, that voter approved referendum levy and tax rate is not subject to these 1%, 2%, and 3% caps. It's a great way to be because you're not subject to that revenue limit. So when we look back to SCA 1, so now that we know what life has been like with some relative limitations in the state of Indiana going back to 2008, going back to last year's legislative session, there were some things that had direct impact and have direct impact on people. I'm not going to read each and every one of these to you, but what we're going to spend some time talking about, this top one is assessed values, on how that's putting some local pressure on your assessed values going forward. Local income tax. There's the mechanics of how local income tax can be distributed. And one of those institute schools is going away. We think in 2029, however, the DLGF is contemplating that may interpret it as 2030. For all intents and purposes tonight, we're assuming that goes away in 2029. We'll talk about that here a little bit more later. Referendum timing, you're probably hearing a lot about the 38 school districts who are pursuing a referendum this November. Just know that you can only now pursue a referendum even year November. So November of 2026, November of 2028, November 2030. So only times schools can, in the state of India now, get on the ballot. And there's a charter school revenue share that will impact KV. So those are the main highlights on what's changing. I would say, coming back to, I'll tell you the same thing I told a board this morning, another nearby school board. SCA 1 is going to force you to look at less in 3 ways. SCA 1 is going to create less predictability on your financial forecast. It's giving you less flexibility because your revenue sources are shrinking opposed to expanding, and you ultimately may have to deal with less revenue as well. So those are the 3 ways we're telling corporations are going to be dealing with less in the state of Indiana, all related to SCA.
Can you say that one more time? Less predictability.
Less predictability, less flexibility, and less revenue. That's why you see so many school districts who are pursuing referendum for this fall. So the first one we talked about was net assessed value. So just know that we're in taxes payable in 2026. We're the first year into a 6-year phase-in of this new net assessed value calculation. So for you homeowners out there, we've not even seen a full wave of what the impact could be. So if you're a homeowner in the state of Indiana, 2026, you're receiving a flat $48,000 homestead deduction. You're receiving a supplemental deduction of 40%. By 2031, we are phasing out this flat standard deduction and going to a 0 standard deduction to a full percentage-based system. And rather than having a fixed percent and a percentage, where in 2031, 2/3 of your gross assessed value will be tax deductible, which is great for taxpayers, no doubt about it. But it's going to put some more strain on that assessed value for municipalities. So just know that we're year 1 into it. We'll look at an example here in a minute. But what they found is, they being the General Assembly, is that with this change in standard deductions and supplemental deductions, it was forcing net assessed values down. So we talked about net assessed value down, tax rates up. It really didn't benefit the taxpayer with having a lower tax rate. So during the session, they added this additional supplemental homestead credit where homeowners and homeowners only receive the lesser of $300 or 10% as an additional credit. So if your tax bill is $1,500, you're getting an additional $150 credit off the bottom line of your tax. So because of that, a lot of tax bills will go down throughout the state of Indiana. That's what's forcing a lot of schools to contemplate referendum. There's additional individual based credits as well there at the bottom. So what the math looks like. Let's take the average home value, the average median value, according to the US Census Bureau. KV last year was $238,300. So the math you just saw in the prior slide, let's take 2026. But for those of you who like to do the math, you're welcome to do it. $238,300 minus $48,000. Then you multiply that by 0.4. You get additional supplemental homestead deduction. So that average taxpayer KV, we assume almost a $240,000 median value. Their taxable value is $114,000. To just give you a scope of the impact on this phase in, if we assume no growth in the gross assessed value, we keep it at right around 240,000, because that percentage is increasing, it goes from $114,000 of net assessed value to under $80,000 in 2031. So again, that shrinking net assessed value potential. So we've got to keep, just to keep your net assessed value flat, just think about the percentage that will have to grow somewhere between 4 to 6 to 7% each year, just to keep this trend line flat, just to stay where you need. So what I would describe property taxes in the state of Indiana is, you can see here, it's essentially a wealth tax. So the greater your value of your home, now the greater the amount of your deduction, because we're going to a fully percentage-based system. So those communities, Hamilton County and Carmel, which has really high value, are going to get more benefit to this because of that percentage-based system.
Am I thinking of the wrong thing, or aren't they talking about too, if your house is paid for, you don't even pay this? Is that
They've had some conversations
Discussion on that?
about it,
Okay.
but that is not part of SCA.
because that would even,
Even if you paid off your home, you're still responsible.
okay, but that has been in discussion though.
That's a really good question. There are a lot of things that are being contemplated and kicked around.
Okay,
So you may have read for, was it Senator Brewster, I think is his name, has put out a policy paper to eliminate property taxes and replace it with a service sales tax.
yeah.
So be like going to a barber.
Hmm.
I don't need one, but if you go to a barber, if you did need a barber,
Yeah,
you'd pay sales tax for
okay,
your haircut.
and that would be a huge impact too, wouldn't it?
That would, there's a lot of things that they need to contemplate, because KV, like a lot of the other municipalities, we have multi-billion dollars worth of debt.
Mhm.
And all of those are backed by property taxes. So you can't just unwind property taxes, because now you've got there's so much security related to paying
Okay.
that debt that it would take a multi-year crosswalk,
Oh, okay,
in my humble opinion, to be able to figure out how to eliminate property taxes. So, I don't think it's as straightforward to say, yep, we're done paying property taxes, because there's a lot of debt that is still assigned and attached to property
Okay.
taxes. Good question. So the next bucket is the 2% property. So if you're a farmer, rental property or long-term care. In 2025, this group did not receive any deductions. So in 2026 was the first year we saw this property group begin to receive a deduction. And that grows to 1/3 of the property by 2031. So again, another example of property class shrinking in potential net assessed value, which is great for taxpayers, but there's going to be an implication on potential programs and services. What I'll say here is, and this is my own personal commentary, this will be interesting to watch, because now, anybody here own rental property?
A farm,
So, but a rental home, let's take a rental home.
yeah.
You'll see that what'll be interesting to see is, will landlords pass on that property tax deduction to those their renters? Again, I'm not here to say if they will or won't, but it really changes the math, because if they were not to, and this deduction continues to increase, it makes it a more profitable business at that point. So then as you see new homes come online, your landlords begin to purchase up more homes as a result of it being a better business model. It's speculative only, but it'll be interesting to see if there's an impact to that. So to that point, here is base rate for ag land in the state of Indiana going back 20 years. So whether you are in Jasper County or live in North Judson, or you live in Stark County or Floyd County down in southern Indiana, we have the same base rate for ag land. It's a multi-year calculation based upon capitalization rates, yields, all from data from Purdue University. So we've seen some swings up and down as a result of these formulas. So in 2026, base rate is right around 2120. It was initially certified at 2390. The General Assembly decreased that and changed the formula. So that does not include the 7% decrease, does not include that 6% deduction. But then in 2027, that number essentially stays flat from where it would have been of 2520 of 2027. And that does not include the 12% deduction as well. So you can see some of the data where farmland has gone up and down throughout the state of Indiana based upon the formula. So business personal property as well is receiving some type of relief on SCA 1. So this de minimis amount, $80,000, and for those of you who get the name of the form, is you itemize your business personal property and you take a tabulation of all of the property you own, the personal property. If it's less than 80,000, you'll pay property taxes on it. That de minimis amount for next year's taxes goes from 80,000 to $2 million. Which again is great. It's great for taxpayers, no doubt about it. But with you having NIPSCO, it'll be interesting to see now that they can, where they line up. I'm sure it'll be well above $2 million, but they may do some more itemization than what even I can fathom. Another important piece, and a nearby school corporation board member described this to me as I was giving a similar type of presentation as this could be, about bottom caveat, could be more like a playground. So effective January 1st, 2025, let's say you are NIPSCO and you have a $10 million piece of equipment helping produce energy. The way it stands now is you would take that piece of equipment, useful life is 10 years. So you depreciate it $1 million a year. After 7 years, you hit your floor at 30%. You continue to pay $3 million on that property until you take it offline. Where last year, it says any new property put into place effective beginning of last calendar year is no longer subject to that 30% floor. So for the very creative accountant types, it is, well, it doesn't necessarily say brand new equipment. So can you create a holding company or a shell company and sell that personal property to the holding company, and now you're putting a new equipment on the books technically. So again, this makes it really hard to predict what could be done with that category. But again, just sharing with you what he's an accountant at a neighboring school district mentioned how he viewed it and how I think a lot of groups will look at it. So what that means to KV, so in knowing all these deductions have taken place beginning in 2026 and are being phased in again in 2027. So we talked about the 4 different classifications of property. So current year in pay 2026, the largest portion of your net assessed value is the purple there, which is your homestead properties. About 41% is homestead. Brown is the 2% cap for ag land, long-term care, rental property. Then the light blue is the personal property. And the dark blue, 16%, being the business real property. essentially the same breakdown as the DLGF. Jasper County is already certified 2027 numbers, basically the same breakdown, percentage wise. We've not seen one category be too significantly benefited or impacted compared to 2026 to 2027. But with all that being said is, what we did is, you're required as having debt outstanding, you have to report your 10 largest taxpayers to your investors, your bond purchasers. So here is a comparison. On the left-hand side is 2025, 10 largest taxpayers. And there on the right is the 2026, 10 largest taxpayers. What I want to bring your attention to is this total percentage there at the bottom. Typically, rating agencies like to see that percentage be somewhere between 12 to 15% to have, quote, a diversified tax base. Not too alarming, you just have a really large taxpayer in the form of NIPSCO in your backyard. That's a good thing. It's just a matter of if they were ever go offline, it could impact your net assessed value, as this group has talked quite a bit about. Highlighted one group in red just because they fell off in the following year, and this new solar group in the top 10 in 2026. But you can see top 10 in the form of mainly NIPSCO, seeing that large increase. The top 10 formed 22% to now over 25% in 2026. Not alarming because this board has been tracking this and tell for some time.
Does anybody know what DeMott 2014 LLC is? I mean, it says truck dealer, but I don't know what that is.
I
I'll
would
be
have to do my
transparent.
digging, yeah.
I'm D Family Farms.
Yeah, I don't know much about DeMott.
Yeah,
I could pull info, but
right.
not offhand. So the state of Indiana, as this group knows, Mr. Ritchie brings forth to you and Mr. Street every January, brings in front of you fiscal assessment. So the state of Indiana has this group called the Distressed Units Appeal. Schools in the state of Indiana are monitored by this state agency. And you are required, Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Street are required to present 7 fiscal indicators to you every year. You'll see this report again if Mr. Ritchie wants to use it. You're welcome to recycle it. It'll be the same content in January. So everything at as of 12/31/2025 looks great on paper. I would describe KV as being in really strong financial position at the end of 2025, sitting on really strong resources. Been very pragmatic with the resources. There's no reason to pull fire. One area we'll continue to monitor, as your team has done extensively, is ADL. I don't think it's any secret, about 60% of the state of Indiana counties are declining in population. Consequently, enrollment is contributing to that. But everything else on paper, compared to your peers, is strong. So as we look at the trend lines for the past 8 years for enrollment. Chart on the left represents in blue, those are the kids who live in KV. The ones in orange are the ones who attend KV, and I would say both represent of a downward trend, both who live and attend KV. So that's why we highlighted in red ADM continue to decline, but I think that's a symptom of, again, what we've seen throughout the state of Indiana. On the right-hand side is you have kids who live outside the district who come in and attend KV, which are the kids in orange. And gray represents the number of kids who are attending, or excuse me, live within KV, but attending elsewhere. And you can see what that trend line has been in that same time horizon for that net transfer. I know that you've heard it many, many times. There's a lot of competition for kids now, and just more and more competition is occurring with universal voucher system, more charter schools statewide, virtual charter schools, just a lot of competition at this point. So the breakdown of our expenses for KV for the past 5 years. This just gives you trend lines. So the 100s object codes are salaries, 200 benefits, 300s, Chris, you remember these off the top of your head better than I. Is services, yeah, contracted services, 600 materials, and 900 are transfers. Did I get that right? So where KV is 90% of your education fund going to people. It's actually higher than what I've seen throughout the state of Indiana. A lot of the schools are working with. So basically 90 cents of every dollar you spend in the education fund is going to support academic programs. A lot of work you've seen this team do here. We talked about less revenue, revenue tightening up. State of Indiana controls funding per kid. But if you compare 2024 to 2025, even though you can see these blue lines increase, total expenses in education fund remain flat. So that validates the work that this board and this administration have done to keep dollars in the classroom. Similarly, operations fund. So again, operation fund are the operational cost of the district. You can see similarly, we've seen majority of our dollars are being expended to salaries and benefits. So about 45% of the operations fund is going to people. But in this fund, since it's the operations, this is the fund you use to buy school buses, technology, software, equipment. So the only thing I'll add is 400s is capital equipment. So you can see a spike there related to school bus purchases, correct, Chris?
I think that's the 700.
Oh, 700, excuse me.
What's the 400s?
That's your construction. repair.
Oh, okay.
That's right. Thank you. So nothing off trend that past 5 years that jumps out that there's a lot of variability in the data, pretty consistent of expenditures year to year. Quick highlight, compare 2024 to 2025, actually our costs were down 15%. For this slide, if you listen to nothing else I say this, nothing else I say. Your cash balances, cash reserves are in a really strong position as of 2025. So if you combine the education fund, operations fund, and rainy day, compared to your expenses, sitting on about an 82% cash reserve. Rating agencies like to see that to be around at least 30%. So you're sitting on a really strong position. So what that signals to me is, as you manage your cash going forward, there's no file. You can make some really heady decisions on how you want to manage program services. There's no immediate threat because you're sitting on such strong reserves.
And when you say immediate threat, does that mean within the next year? Like, how do you
Great
characterize
question.
that?
Hold that question. Great question. Richie, anything you guys want to jump in? Don't feel any pressure to, it's sitting on really strong reserves. So now as we look ahead. This is some great questions. So the assumptions, as we look over the time horizon of the next 8 years, the assumptions drive the financial forecast, right? So the assumptions you use are going to dictate what has occurred. So as part of the assumption we're using is working with your team. They're at the bottom, and what we're looking at for the projection for enrollment on ADM. No surprise, assuming a decrease in enrollment for both the fall and spring counts. We're assuming the state of Indiana will continue to increase funding per student by 2%. I think the average has been somewhere right around 2.4%, so a little bit more conservative than what the state of Indiana has done. Our team looked at the parcel level analysis in regards to SCA 1, and what the impact could be on tax credits, and using your assumptions that you've already seen on max levy growth portion for the operations fund. But again, we're assuming a local income tax sunset in 2029, could occur in 2030, depending upon what the DLGF does. But from a disbursement standpoint, we'll look at some different scenarios on salary and how that could impact your cash balances going forward. But generally speaking, we're using 3% on increases for salaries and benefits as a starting point, 8% on staff benefits, and 6.5% on utilities. Try to start with being really conservative in our assumptions. Net assessed value, the assumption we're using here, you heard me say earlier, we've seen some really strong growth. We looked at 2022 to 2026. 1 year double digit, but if you take the last 3 years, we were right around 9.6% growth. Now with SCA 1, 2027, we're actually going to drop by 1.5%. Making some assumptions on county growth and where it's been historically, our parcel level team is projecting that net assessed value could actually stay relatively stable through 2031, using some of the updated cost tables from the DLGF. We'll see if that holds true. So somewhere assuming about a 2.7, 2.8% increase in net assessed value. If somebody were to ask you, what has SCA 1 done to Kankakee Valley schools in 2026? Here's your answer. We will see a $381,000 decrease in revenue as a result of SCA 1 in 2027. We talked about that lesser of $300 or 10%. That's exactly what that $381,000 does to Kankakee Valley School in 2026. We're going to get into some pretty heavy stuff here, but I don't need for you to be a local income tax expert. Just know that the mechanics of how local income tax and property taxes are calculated changes in 2029. That impacts KV in 2 ways. You currently receive a direct distribution from the county in the form of local income tax. That goes. And a portion of your property tax bill is you pay lit to buy down your property tax. That goes away as well, which means more increase in levy to homeowners because that lit is no longer being applied to your property tax. Again, don't expect you to be experts. Just know the mechanics are changing in 2029, which will impact your revenue. And Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Street already well ahead of us talking about excise tax. We'll get into it later. So what that means from a property tax credit standpoint, the blue is your net levy. So if you look at your operations fund, debt service, and referendum debt, easy for me to say, but the percentage impact on tax credits has been relatively small, 0.1 to 0.2% pre SCA 1. Now 2026 and beyond, we're going to see tax credits increase, which means your revenue is going to tighten up as a result. So we're projecting you're going to continue to receive new dollars, just not as much as you would have pre-SEA one. So your total tax credit impact in 2026, once you add in that 381,000, about 434,000. But as local income tax ends, that impact on an annual basis, we're estimating to be over 700,000. So your tax credit impact is increasing by 63%. What that looks like. Great question, Mrs. Sampson. Let's look at the education fund. 2023 through 2025 are actuals on our blue revenue. Then, based upon our enrollment projection, going forward through 2033, even with a 2% increase, every year we're assuming per student from the state of Indiana, because our enrollment is dropping, as this team has already began to deploy some right sizing on staffing, but if we keep the assumption no changes in programs and services, you can see how that gap widens in your education fund comparing your annual revenue to your expenses. So what that happens to your cash balance with these assumptions modeled in, KV would run out of money in 2030 in the education. But this team has already begun to deploy some of those right-sized efforts to mitigate that impact. So what we talk about, Mrs. Sampson, coming back to your question, is how soon is based upon these assumptions, you'd be 4 years away. Because you're sitting on strong cash reserves. So you have time to make heady decisions if these trends hold true. Similarly, on the operations fund, again, blue represents the annual revenue. 2026 and beyond, we're estimating some deficits with year by year, that gap widens. But we still say, because of the strong cash balances, still sit on positive reserve amounts in the operation. So even with SEA 1, you see in 2029, we're estimating that drop because of lit, local income tax, and PTRC changing. But we still say that in positive cash reserve. So combined, looking at education fund, operations, and rainy day fund, if you combine those, blue is your revenue, orange is your expenses, sitting on 82% cash balance. So collectively, if these assumptions held true and did not deploy any reductions that you already, shouldn't say reductions, any right sizing on staff that your team is deploying, you would run out of money in 2032. When we talk about you've got time, you're not on any immediate threat to run out of money because of your team and how they've managed cash to this point. So just to give you some different scenarios on what it looks like on some sensitivity analysis. So you heard me say, well, all your models assume 3% increases per year. Yes, that is correct. So that gray line represents the 3% scenario. The yellow represents a 2% estimate. Blue represents a 1% increase, and the green represents if we did not give any increase to salary, what it looks like and how that impacts. So about every 1% translates to about $2.34 million of cash. All right, so we talked about education, SEA 1, what the projections look like. Now to take it home, like what do we need to be looking at going ahead? Revenue headwinds, as we talked about, less revenue, potential for less revenue. Fewer students, and it's in one, it's all contributing. You're in a really strong cash position. There's no reason to panic, hit the panic button at this point. Now, it will, if nothing is monitored and you don't practice discipline, you may jeopardize our cash position. However, there's no reason to hit the panic button now. Sitting on strong reserves, your team has been very, very diligent, continue to be very diligent about it. So now, it'll just be a matter of how do we look at our priorities going forward and how do we manage those priorities in the coming years, knowing that we have some challenges revenue-wise on the horizon. So I've sufficiently depressed everyone. I'm not gonna go through much here. You have a really strong credit rating with A+ rating. That's just a debt summary, debt rating summary. And this is your outstanding debt, just as a quick reminder. What it looks like with the proposed projects. So just wanted to highlight that, even though we talked about operations fund. This board has, in this administration, pragmatically managed debt, so it's not like you mortgage the future. So you're sitting in a really good position from a debt perspective. So no reason to hit the panic button, but we do have some revenue challenges on the horizon. Hope I didn't keep it too long, but welcome. Any questions or comments?
I appreciate how thorough you were. I think we've all been a little nervous
Oh, yeah.
about this, and I think we'll continue to be, but we do appreciate how thorough it was. I think there was a lot of things that clarified for me.
Yeah. It made me
We've
less
been on
nervous.
this
but
board,
it's-
a few of us, for quite a few years, and
Right.
this may have been the best
I
presentation that
agree.
I've ever had.
I agree.
So,
Yeah. So thank you.
Your team does a great job.
Few things that we've talked about. I was writing them down as Brock was talking. For several years, we have not transferred money from operations to rainy day. So our rainy day balance has been even, which gives us more money in the operations fund. Pay those salary benefits and to pay the things that we need to. And it's also given us continue to have a solid cash balance. We have also reduced our transfers from education to operations. And that has given us we knew after negotiations last year that we would have to make sure we were doing the right fit. 2 negotiations ago, we gave a very significant pay increase. I'm not saying it was deserved. I'm not saying it wasn't. And we also have contributed a lot for benefits as well, which Brock has shown in the presentation. We just have to make sure that we have the right fit based upon our student population. And as Brock said, 60-some% of the counties have seen a decrease in student population. So we also heard in previous presentations that we have a very high number of aides in our school, and our student teacher ratio has been very generous. And we just have to make sure that we're doing the right fit, as Brock had said earlier, or we're going to turn around and we'll be upside down in 2030. And I don't think that's a situation any of us definitely do not want to be in. So sometimes that takes us all saying no, and what we're doing is we're still providing an outstanding quality education to the students that we serve.
but that's where I'm thankful for not only our administration, but this team of. Yes, if we change nothing, 2030 is a really bad time, but that's 4 years away, and that's not a position that a lot of school districts are in. So I'm, as much as it's a doom and gloom presentation, at the same point, there's this light because some stuff has gone right for quite a few years that we're not in a real doom and gloom today, that we can work with it and make sure we're good.
Brad, can you tell the listener a little bit about what we're gonna be doing with your team moving forward?
Yeah, so we work with a number of districts, not just in Indiana, but nationwide on operational analysis. And as Chris and I joked around the other day, if you've seen the movie Office Space, that's not what it's like. Bob and Bob's come in and like, what do you say you do here? That's not the intent. It's just to give a second set of eyes. And what we'll be assisting your team with is some peer comparisons on staffing ratios and on operational cost. So there's a story behind your expenses. And there's a reason why you do certain things. So it's just a second set of eyes. So for example, how we work with districts is transportation costs are X dollars per pupil, where the peers will take 20 to 30 peers. Maybe you're lower than this portion by 5% or higher. There's maybe a reason why. You're larger geographic area, larger square footage. So just helping look and peel back those layers of those costs to identify, are there any areas of efficiency that we can gain based upon perhaps what we see our peers doing, or if the data helps uncover something that otherwise wouldn't be able to.
That's fantastic.
I know a couple people have asked me, what will the school benefit from the data center that's coming? Is there any way to project that? Is that included in these forecasts or not? That's not correct.
No, it is not. It'll depend. I'll give my 2 cents, but I'll defer to you two gentlemen unless you want me to jump in, but if abatements are given, or if it's in a TIF district, which I don't think it is, but if some abatements are given, that means that the assessed value that the data center will be paying initially is less than the full value. So it's a tax break typically used to allow private industry to come online and afford it as they build out. So they initially may not be too big of an impact besides perhaps some employment.
The same with a peaker unit, right? That's going in first.
Because they've already approved the abatement for the peaker, 10 years,
I believe so,
I think.
yes.
It was fun. Thank you.
Thank you. The next on the agenda leads into the 2027 budget information, Chris.
You got a long go.
Go ahead. She'll be right back.
Chris, you're on. You're on. Huh?
I don't have this.
I know. Go ahead.
Good night.
Thank
Good night.
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Chris.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay. Your budget packet was sent to you on Thursday or Friday. You probably had a chance to look that over. A couple. Want to point out a couple things. The purpose of the budget, as we talked about before, one is we set appropriations. So we're getting a permission to spend money that we have and we will be getting. We request tax rates and a levy from the county and from the through our district. We set those through the budget, and we approve capital projects and a bus replacement plan. Those are the purposes of the budget. And you guys have approved these before, I'm sure you're well aware of it. Couple things to note: we've reduced because of our declining enrollment, we're expecting to have a slight revenue decline, about $100,000 in education fund that was expected. You guys have seen how that's going. That could change by 27, if hopefully we get some more kids here in the fall. Or at this point, conservatively, we're expecting a slight reduction there. We reduced appropriations in the education fund by just over $1 million, $1,042,000. So we're just constricting that a little bit because we feel that we will not need that for expenditures. In the operations fund, as we talked about a minute ago, our maximum levy growth, that's the amount that we can grow our operations fund this year is 7.64%. It's been about 4% in the past, so that was some really good news. They're looking at his analysis. It doesn't stay that way year after year. They pull some of that back. Our tax cap increase or impact increase this year in 26 was 433,000. We're expecting that to go up to 500,000 in 27. That goes along with what Brock was showing us. By 2029, we're at 707,000. So that's right in there. So those things, we've had some increase in revenue there, and we had some decrease from the tax impact. We're expecting our revenue overall to increase in operations fund and put us about where we were at in 25. 26, we saw that big tax impact take us down 400,000, but you didn't have the increase of the maximum growth quotient to bring it back. So we'll be about where we're at in 25 is what we're anticipating. We've reduced appropriations for 2027 by about $2 million in operations fund. We feel we still have enough there to do what we need to do. We always want to appropriate more than what we need to give us flexibility, but we don't have to appropriate everything we have. We feel that's a good number. There are expenditures in 26 that we were able to shift to our bonds. We have a bond of 2024 that we got in 2024 that we're paying for the improvements in the auditorium. And we had some other HVAC projects in the other buildings, not the major ones, the high school and things, but things at Mon Elementary and other things that we were able to pay for. We got new water heaters at the middle school. Those things were able to go to the bond with remaining funds so that we didn't have to charge the operations fund. That helps in cash balance in the year also. Those are the major things I wanted to point out. Oh, and our assessed valuation, Brock talked about, we're anticipating a reduction of about 1.6%. So anytime we have reduction in assessed valuation, it's going to make rates go up to get the same levy. So we're anticipating that rates will go up somewhat. We advertised a rate of 0.9873 cents. And we will be lower than that. I'm pretty sure once our, we always advertise high in the LGF that brings back there where we need to be. We anticipate us being somewhere around where we were in 2021 as far as the combined tax rate. It's not something we haven't seen before, but the reduce in AV will add some sense to that, to our rate. Are there also, so where from here we would go is we would advertise the budget tomorrow, that we would have a hearing on August 24th, and then we would plan for budget adoption on September 14th. If there's no concerns about the budget, we're happy with where we're at. That's what I'll plan to do tomorrow. If there's any questions you have to answer them or thought about it, you need to call me tomorrow, that's fine. Thank you.
Good.
Sounds good.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Staffing, we are pretty full, and complete. Might have one or two for paraprofessionals still to hire, but for the most part, we have all of our teachers hired. We've got a nice staff. We just had the new teacher orientation on Thursday and Friday. Got a nice staff. It was, middle school and high school. We do not have any elementary teachers. We've got started. The evaluations, I know Don and board notes had given you some evaluation results. Go over those again. We had 62% of our teachers were highly effective, 37% were effective, and then we have 1%, which would be 3 that have needs improvement. So they'll start off on improvement plans for the semester. Population. Wheatfield is at 271. And then next in, we have 536 for Demont. And then
Can you
we
go
have
up?
the intermediate. What's that?
So can you go up so we can see the
I'm
top
sorry.
of Wheatfield? Thanks.
There we go. And then we have the intermediate school, which is at 447. The middle school, sorry, is at 686. And then the high school is at 940 for a total population of 2880 at this point.
You would highlight column D and scroll up
Column D.
D, the ratio. Yeah.
Oh my. I'm trying.
Click on D.
You do it on this one.
Yeah. So. One more, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So what we have here is we've taken the number of teachers and the current enrollment. So you can see at our kindergarten at Wheatfield, we're looking about 19.33 for kindergarten. First grade at Wheatfield, 16 3/4. Second grade, 21.67, and third grade, 17.5. At Demont, we're looking at 18.57 for kindergarten. First grade, 17.57. Demont 22, and for second grade and third grade, we're looking at 21. That is still significantly lower than what we were told during our presentation during a few weeks back during our meeting. And then fourth and fifth grade are at 23.33, and fifth grade at 24.89. So we're trying to get that right fit that we've talked about. And then if one section was reduced, it would give us an idea over there in column F of where we are. I'm not saying 29 is the right fit for kindergartners in a classroom, but maybe 22 would be 21, 22 in those areas. So we just have to make sure we're right fit. Now, keep in mind, this is before school started. So we hope that we'll, and we usually do have some move-ins. Count days in October this year. We're going to have move-ins and move-outs just like every school year. Oh. Well, a lot of information. So,
A lot.
a lot of information for you all. Any items for us? Any that we haven't covered? Today we had our first teacher day. Katie and Jill were there. We like to thank the cheerleaders and the Cougar and a few band members. In the middle school, the cheerleaders and the Cougar were outside the office and library when our staff was walking in.
That was a nice touch, I thought.
Band, it was really the section leaders. So the cheerleaders came out and kind of went around the cafeteria. The Cougars out there, the band came out. They did the school song. So it was something different. And the cheerleaders and band, the Cougar did a fabulous job. It was a little bit different than what we've had in the past. We did our elf training. Ryan did elf training with our SROs and Jeff Molinar. Did a fabulous job with that, which stands for
Evacuate, lockdown, fight.
thank you. School safety. And then, Stacy Heineman presented on behaviors, student behaviors. And then Randy Schrock presented on de-escalation. So it was a really good day. Tomorrow's day 2, and they'll be meeting in meetings. And then Wednesday is the big day. So the buses will be rolling and the kitchens will be working away, and we'll be at it. So
Ryan, I'll be on phone patrol.
yes.
Phone patrol.
Phone patrol?
Phone.
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll definitely be doing that, really.
Well, if you have nothing, we've covered a lot tonight. We'll end the work session then. Thank you.